I'm Kirk Coleman, and you're watching The Cat Cave.
Whether you're in North or South Carolina or anywhere else in the world, enter the Cat Cave with Ryan Frick and Shannon Smith to listen to your favorite Carolina Panthers podcast as part of the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, where you can find shows like Embrace Debate, Inside the Vault, Believe in Panthers, and powered by the Fans First Sports Network. I am Ryan Frick alongside Shannon Smith. Shannon, what's going on, bud? How are things?
Things are good, man. We got a little bit of a heavy subject to talk about in the show, but we got some good stuff to talk about too as well.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get into it because we're going to start the show doing something a little different, talking about something a little different, because although it involves the Panthers, if you watched or heard the beginning of that episode, you heard a voice, the voice of Kurt Coleman, because we had the chance and the privilege of meeting both Kurt Coleman and Wesley Walls, Panthers greats, over the weekend. Shannon and I were invited. First of all, shout out to our producer, Desmond Johnson, of Tobacco Road Sports Radio, and all the things he does. Believe in Panthers, the Desmond Johnson Show. He does all sorts of stuff over there. But he got some communication last week where Shannon and I were invited to be part of the Southern Distilling Company's release of a limited edition Southern Star Paragon with a cognac finish bourbon whiskey to celebrate and commemorate 30 years of the Carolina Panthers. Shannon, we got to tour the facility. We got to rub elbows and talk with both Wesley Walls and Kurt Coleman. At the end of the tour, we got a bottle of the bourbon whiskey. It was an amazing experience. We got to meet some cool people, some other podcasters, some other influencers. It was the first time in my life I've ever been referred to as an influencer. But real quick shout out to, as I'm pulling them up, the Panthers Uncensored podcast, the Keep Purring podcast, and Panthers Nation that we all got to be a part of, or they all got to be a part of the stuff, the festivities with us over the weekend. Shannon, share your experience with the audience about how that the tour and the tasting and all that stuff went for you.
You know what, Ryan? I gotta say, it's the same thing with me. I've never been considered an influencer. When we came in the door, and we came in, and one of the bartenders was like, "Oh, you're one of the influencers." I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So then we figured out everything, and then we all got together. We got our tour, and the place is really nice. The place that we were at, it was a really cool place. They showed how they made their bourbon whiskey. They showed the process and everything that it goes through. And then we later on went upstairs, and we got to meet Wesley Walls and Kurt Coleman. Might I say, both those guys are very cool guys. They sat around and talked, and they took pictures. They did the videos like we asked, and they were really, really nice. They didn't complain about anything. They were great, and all the podcasters as well too. Fun guys, Keep Purring. They were cool. Panthers Uncensored, Panthers Nation. Great guys, fun guys. It was a really cool experience. Glad we got to be a part of it. Appreciate it, Des. Whoever watched the Cat Cave and all that, we appreciate you doing that. Thank you for the support. Thank you for what y'all do for Tobacco Road. Thank you for what you do for us here at the Cat Cave. Thank you, guys. It was a great experience.
Yeah, to give you a heads up, if you're looking to find this place, it's called Southern Distilling Company. It's located at 211 Jennings Road in Statesville, North Carolina. Listen, if you've never been there, if you're close to the area, if it's close enough to make the drive, because it's about 2 hours away from home for me, I highly recommend going for a tour. The staff was phenomenal. We got to meet the owners of the distillery that were very, very humble and appreciative of the fact that we were there. And like I said, the staff couldn't have been friendlier and more accommodating, not just to us, but everybody around us, because after we got there, it was open to the public. And after we got there, we saw plenty of people coming in and going in and out of the door. They had a food truck outside. They had other alcohol, other spirits inside that you could purchase that were made and brewed at the distillery. We got something that was called, what was it? The double shot. It's like a bourbon liqueur. It tastes like chocolate milk.
Yeah, the bourbon cream. Yeah, that bourbon cream.
Yeah.
Woo.
It was it was on sale when we were there, so it was only like $30 for the bottle, less than $30. So a phenomenal experience, indescribable. Honestly, I've never felt more important, although being so unimportant in the grand scheme. Well, but yeah, I highly recommend. I'm going to talk to some folks. I'm going to talk to some friends here about going out there because, like Shannon said, we got the history of the distillery. We got to see every step of the process in making the bourbons, and we were explained to why it's allowed to be called bourbons and what kind of barrels they're put in. And we got to see the bourbon before they barreled it, before they aged it, where it looked like moonshine, and it was what you could drink and what you couldn't drink. And we got to see the corn being fermented and stuff. Like, it was a phenomenal experience. So if you've never been there before, or if you're looking for something new to do and you're a fan of bourbon, whiskey, or otherwise, go check out Southern Distilling Company. And this is a free plug. Go check out Southern Distilling Company at 211 Jennings Road in Statesville, North Carolina. I promise you will not be disappointed. I think this is the best commercial that anybody may have done for them. So shout out to Southern Distilling Company and all the people that work there, because it was a phenomenal experience and we couldn't be more grateful. Make sure you go and check out our social medias, our personal social medias, at Ryan Frick Comedy on Instagram, Ryan Frick on Facebook. I think I made the post public. I'm not sure if I put it over on the Tap House and Touchdowns Facebook page. We are working, so to kind of peek behind the curtain, we are working with our former cohort of the Cat Cave to get this Cat Cave social media accounts under our control, because Mike Davis used to run the Cat Cave social media. We are in the process of getting that. When we do, we'll be posting some of that to the Cat Cave's Instagram as well, to the Cat Cave's X account. Just to give you a quick reminder, Instagram and X, we are at the Cat Cave _FFSN, and we'll post it there so you guys can take a look at that stuff. So, with that being said, Shannon, as great as Saturday was, Sunday came and the clock struck midnight for the Carolina Panthers and their season opener, as the Carolina Panthers fall on the road to the New Orleans Saints 47-10. Shannon, I don't know how to approach just like talking about this game, because I have some pretty strong feelings coming out of this game. Shannon, give me your thoughts. Panthers dropped their season opener in a pretty dramatic fashion. By dramatic, I mean like dramatically horrible. Shannon, what are your thoughts on the game opening loss, the season opening loss, I should say, to the New Orleans Saints?
Well, I don't know where to begin, because there were a lot of things that were present in this game, and there were not many that were good. The only good thing I can say about this game is that it's over. Other than that, not really much to say. Bryce did get his first rushing touchdown. That was the only touchdown of the game. But just, there were so many things that were there that were. First of all, I got to go ahead and say with the once again the hype of this squad, the summer hype of this squad. Last year we got some summer hype. This year we got summer hype with a new coach. This coach is going to fix the quarterback problem, going to see if he can fix what's going on with Bryce Young. Money was spent on the offensive line. There were things added to the team, like more receiving and an offense that's probably going to be different than last year. It was different, all right, but it wasn't a good difference. So, shall we begin with the offense or the defense, or where would you like to begin, Ryan? I'm just going to ask you.
I mean, listen, I can pretty much summarize my thoughts about it with a couple of things. One, the defense did not look good.
No.
We thought that Frankie Louvu and Brian Burns departing would be a factor, but I didn't expect it to be this dramatic of a drop-off on the defensive side of the ball. I will tell you so let's go ahead since we're here. Let's start off on defense because the defense gave up 47 points. I don't care what you say about the Panthers offense not being able to keep the defense off the field. I mean, Bryce Young had 30 passing attempts. Like he had time on offense. If you look at the rushing attempts, as I try to pull it up as quickly as I can, the rushing attempts in this game for the Carolina Panthers, 11, 15, 19 rushing attempts, including 4 from Bryce Young. So 11 rushing attempts and 31 passing attempts because Andy Dalton did attempt to pass in this game. That's, what's that, 42 or so offensive plays. It's not a lot, but it's enough to give the defense some time to rest, and it didn't matter because we made Derek Carr look like a Pro Bowler. We made Derek Carr look like the guy who did all the skill challenges in the Pro Bowl and just ate it up. Derek Carr torched this defense for 200 yards. He only threw 4 incompletions the entire game, 3 touchdowns. The defense, we talk about pass rush, we only got 1 sack on Derek Carr. We gave up 5.5 yards a carry to Alvin Kamara. And let's talk about Raheed Shaheed for a second. He had 3 catches, 73 yards, and a touchdown in this game. And his touchdown came on a bomb by Derek Carr. This is what frustrates me the most about this defense. Two things. One, there was not an over-the-top safety to help J.C. Horn in coverage, which left the route vulnerable. But what made it worse to me, and listen, I have been a homer multiple times on this show about former Gamecocks, all right? J.C. Horn is a former Gamecock. Raheed Shaheed caught that pass and stumbled on his way to the end zone, okay? The worst part about it was as he stumbled and fought his way into the end zone, J.C. Horn pulled up. That shows a lack of effort. It shows a lack of discipline. It shows a lack of pride in what you do. And I understand that J.C. Horn is still a young player. What is he, year 3 in this defense?
Yep.
If I'm looking back at that film and I watch that play, I'm not so mad as to say that, like, where was the over the top safety? Maybe it was supposed to be a man defense, man-to-man defense, and J.C. Horn just got beat deep, which is bad enough. But when you get beat deep and you don't at least try to hustle to stop him from getting into the end zone, worst case scenario, you tackle him at the 1 and maybe you force a field goal.
Yep.
It's a bad look. And at this point, and I know it's only game 1, but J.C. Horn has missed a lot of time due to injuries. And this lack of effort when you could at least make the attempt to catch up with a stumbling wide receiver, bumbling into the end zone. Maybe it's time to admit that J.C. Horn is not the guy. Shannon, what are your thoughts on this defensive performance giving up 47 points to the Saints?
One thing I can say is that Carolina needs to go back to running a 4-3 defense. I think they should run a 4-3 defense. That's one of the things that I looked at the most. A 3-4 defense has not worked for the Carolina Panthers. A 4-3 defense is when the Carolina Panthers were a dominant defense. They had that 4-3 when they were going to the Super Bowl. They ran a 4-3 at that time. They ran a 4-3 when they were playoff contention, when they were winning the NFC South. I've never seen a 3-4 defense in Carolina's ran be worth what they should be worth anything. I don't see them running a 3-4 because there were times, like, once again, you pointed out, 1 sack. That was one of the reasons why Derek Carr had so much success. Nobody was around him. No pass rush. Nobody got in there. No one was able to disrupt anything. So he was able to sit back there and throw bombs. Most of the time, he can pick and choose who he threw to. Of course, you're going to look great when you have time. And so that was something he did. And another thing also.
Sorry, hold on real quick. Even when he was forced to get out the pocket, he threw across his body and the defensive backs weren't there.
Didn't matter.
They were leaving guys open. It was like they were playing Madden on easy. Like I get heated about it because the defense was the strength of this team and they gave up 47 points in week 1. I'm sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
No, you're good. You're good, man. No, you understand. I mean, I get what you're saying, and you're right. Derek Carr threw no interceptions. He didn't turn the ball over. That was one of the things also too. He didn't turn the ball over. He would look like he wasn't rushed. The times he was rushed, like you said, he was throwing across his body, which is basically showing right there that the pass rush is nothing. And so they've got to get more guys in the backfield. They got to get guys in the defensive backfield. They got to get guys right at that line of scrimmage. They got to push those guys because that offensive line was moving defenders around like nothing. Kamara was able to get his yards. I had him on fantasy. I will say this. So that did help me out, although I did take an L this week. But it was one of those things where he was able to do what he wanted. That offense was able to do what they wanted. And the Saints are not that great of an offense. It doesn't matter. I mean, they were not a great offense as of last year. This year might be a different story. But coming into that game, I really didn't see a lot on that offense except for Kamara. But yet still it didn't matter. It was like they were throwing everything. They were doing what they wanted to. It was out coaching more than anything, but it was more out playing than it was out coaching. So yeah, you're right. I think a 3-4 has got to go from Carolina. It has to.
Well, insult to injury, star defensive lineman Derek Brown has a meniscus injury that requires surgery. A meniscus injury that quarterback for the Vikings, why can't I say his name? I've said it earlier today.
JJ McCarthy.
JJ McCarthy. It cost me JJ McCarthy his rookie year, and depending on the severity of the surgery that they're going to have to perform on Derek Brown, we may already be missing one of our stars on the defensive side of the ball for the next 16 games of the year. Mm-hmm. So add insult to injury. You talked about going to a 4-3. You talked about getting pressure on the quarterback. This is a big blow for the Panthers defense. And at this point, again, it's only game 1. But at this point in this early in the season, you can't afford to take a loss like this because there's not a lot of guys out there that are available that can come and give you the type of talent, give you the type of effort that Derek Brown can't. So unfortunate circumstances there. Continue on the defense, but let's move over to the offense for a second because I posed a really, really interesting question at the end of the last show. Fortunately, we haven't gotten a whole lot of kickback from it. But I asked the question last week, if Bryce Young comes out and looks like the Bryce Young that we saw last year, would it be too early to say that the Panthers ought to move on from him after 2 years? Well, let me tell you this. I don't believe Bryce Young is the quarterback of the future for the Carolina Panthers. And I'll give you a prime example as why I say, listen, I have been an advocate to give Bryce Young a chance. Because last year was a rough year, bad offensive line, bad coaching, a new coaching staff in year 2, all that stuff. All we heard in the offseason, they signed 2 guards, millions of dollars to bolster this offensive line. Bryce Young is sacked 4 times in this game. We talked about the fact that he didn't have any weapons. They go and sign Deontay Johnson. They draft Xavier Legette. They've got some tight ends that can make some plays, although Ian Thomas was out for this game, and I think he's going to be out for a few more weeks. Mm-hmm. Your leading receiver was Adam Thielen, 3 catches for 49 yards. That's not the most egregious thing about this, okay? The very first play on offense for the Carolina Panthers in the 2024 season, Bryce Young throws an interception. That is not the story. If you go back and watch this interception, Bryce Young, as he walks off the field, is talking to one of his teammates, and you can see him smiling and laughing about the interception that he just threw to start his sophomore campaign for the Carolina Panthers. Now, we've also been told in camp that wide receivers have been able to get open a little more than we normally used to see them over the past few seasons. That we're supposed to see some improvement in offense. I mean, Miles Sanders, the leading rusher, had 22 rushing yards, averaged 4.4 yards a carry. But when it comes to Bryce Young coming off the field after throwing an interception, I don't care if the defender made a miraculous diving catch to pick him off. I don't care if there's miscommunication and the wide receiver was supposed to zig and he zagged and you threw the ball where he was supposed to be. Oh, man, we'll get it next time. You don't have next time anymore, Bryce Young.
You don't.
I don't care what point in your career that you are in. If your first offensive play of the season is a turnover, I don't want to see you laughing or smiling on the way to the sidelines. I think Bryce Young doesn't take this seriously. I think obviously after a while, I mean, the guy he had more incompletions than completions, 13 of 30 in this game for under 200 yards, 2 interceptions. You mentioned he had the rushing touchdown in this game, but 3 yards a carry at 4 carries. Who cares? The turnovers were more detrimental than his first ever rushing touchdown was. Mm-hmm. Bryce Young, yeah, I'm sure it gets frustrating when you're down 37 points. I'm sure it gets frustrating when you're getting sacked 4 or 5 times a game. I get it. So if you know how miserable that feels, you know how bad last season was, it is not a good look for Bryce Young, the franchise quarterback, to turn the ball over on the opening drive of the season and to walk off the field smiling and laughing about it. Mm-mm. Shannon, what say you? What are your thoughts on this abysmal performance by the Panthers offense?
Well, hopefully he's smiling saying what else could go wrong. And that wasn't a dare because it got worse from there. But I'm with you on that one, Ryan. I mean, the more I looked at it, and I had to watch the game later because I worked that day. So I went home and I already had the game taped. I knew what was up. I saw the score. I knew. So I was like, all right, let's find out. So I watched that game, and I'm going to tell you what, when you let 30 points by in the first half, 30 points was let by 30 daggone points. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. And you were goose-egged at that time, too. So it was no points. They scored no points whatsoever. 30 points let by the defense, no points by the offense. There's no productivity. You didn't show up. And I'm exactly with you on that one, Ryan. I don't want to see you smiling. And I saw that. And I was like, you got to be kidding. And I got you in your text when you text me and said, remind me to talk about that on the show. And I'm like, you better believe it. And I didn't have to remind you because you knew. I mean, because if you wouldn't have said it, I would have. Because that's exactly what I saw. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. I am very, very disappointed in this because, once again, I'm the same way. I felt the same way. We talked about this last year when you said, should they put in Andy Dalton for the remainder of the season? And I said, honestly, that man will get murdered if he goes out there. He would get murdered. He would get mauled. It would be murder. It would not be good. They would have to put the Panthers defensive coaches on trial for a murder because that man was going to get beat up. This time around, money was spent. Everything was said was supposed to be done. And this, inexcusable. Inexcusable at all. I don't, as much as I got to put it on players, which I will, because coaches and front office people are not going out there playing. We got to put it on the front office as well, too, because the trades were made for a first-round quarterback, for a first-round pick, to get a quarterback. You mortgage your farm, you get this guy. Being the way that Dave Tepper is, and yes, I'm going to go ahead and agree with you, worst owner in the NFL. I was on MD's podcast where we talked about that. I said, I'm going to leave Jerry Jones alone. David Tepper has taken the worst owner in the NFL seat. He's there. But one thing that I got to look at is David Tepper's a billionaire, right? He's a billionaire. Why in the world do you want to waste your money? Billionaires are wanting to keep their money. You're going to want a return on investment if you mortgage basically all your team, your best receiver, draft picks for the next year, and you're going to get this guy, and he does this in year 2. I get it. It's the second year. But when you're watching Will Levis, because I looked at all the quarterbacks in the league. After this game, I went and looked at every single quarterback and how they played. Will Levis, first 4 years starting. Will Levis had a pretty good game. Andy Richardson did well. Losing effort, but did well. Put points on the board. Kyler Murray coming back from injury. He didn't look that great now. He didn't look all that great either. But he still was
Kyler Murray looked amazing. What do you mean? I mean, Kyler Murray is able to get out of the pocket. He's able to avoid tackles and get the ball off. Kyler Murray looked like Kyler Murray pre-injury 2 years ago. Kyler Murray looked decent.
And he has a scheme, and there we go. He has a scheme. Okay, I'll regress that. I'll take that back. My bad. I don't really
It's all
think.
good.
I don't think that Kyler Murray's all that great. I don't think he is. But in this game, he did look great. He did look great. They have a scheme for him.
Yep.
They know how to work around him. He was able to put points on the board. I don't know. There's not a scheme for Bryce. There's not a scheme for him. You know, they got to look at the fact that his height. They got to look at the fact that he has to roll out. They got to look at the fact that he's not as physically gifted as some of these other guys, but we can make this work if we have a scheme. And I don't know if the scheme is put in place for him. I don't know if he's in the right scheme. I don't know. I feel like they honestly just, after this year, I think he needs to go down to maybe the UFL, the Canadian League, get some skills, get some mindset, get a humbling experience. Come on back. I think this is what he should do.
I don't think he's going to go as far as to play in another league. I don't think the Panthers are going to cut him for that matter. And listen, like,
and for those who look at Baker Mayfield, and Sam Darnold, who went and played well, that's Sunday as well too. But if we let Bryce go, he might go and do well somewhere else. Look at the fact of where these guys have got teams, like who they have around them. Sam Darnold has a team around him, and probably one of the best receivers in the league as well too. Has an offensive coordinator that was a head coach at one point in time, actually can coach some offense. I don't know how he feels about Sam Darnold over Tua Tagovailoa, but that's another story. And also you've got Baker Mayfield, who has a squad that looks like they're entrusting him to be a good quarterback right now. It looks like they're going to give him a reign to do it. I think he had a humbling experience going to Tampa Bay after what happened to him in Carolina, and then going to the Rams for a little bit, and then coming to Tampa Bay and winning the NFC South, which is not a gauntlet of a conference, but it's just the fact of he won a conference, he won a division championship.
Yeah.
So there's no way to speak on it, but yet he has a squad that's going to let him play. I don't know what it is, and I think that Bryce might have that mind frame that he has to go home run every single time.
I don't know, but I think it's fair to say that, like, listen, Dez is probably going to ream us for being so negative on the show. I'm sorry.
Right.
There's not a lot of positives to take away from last week. As a matter of fact, the question has to be brought up. I know it's only week 1, but with the Lions coming out on Sunday Night Football against the Rams, Calvin Johnson did the pregame video about I was on this team and we were 0-16. That got me to thinking. Shannon, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being most likely, 1 being least likely, what's the likelihood that the Panthers can be the first team in NFL history to go 0-17?
I would say a 7. I'm going to hold out hope for a little bit, and that's probably going to be maybe 2 games again. That's probably going to be maybe 2 or 3 games.
I think that it's more likely than ever that they can go 0-17. You look at their schedule, I don't really see any games that I think maybe we win this game. Mm-hmm. I just don't. So no. I just hope that if they do go 0-17, that David Tepper doesn't pull a David Tepper and completely decide to overhaul it again and set the program back another 2 years. All right. That being said, we're getting towards the end of the show. We do have a game 2 this week. The Los Angeles Chargers come to Charlotte to take on the Panthers. The Chargers are a 6.5-point road favorite. The Chargers coming off a win against the Raiders that saw the coaching debut of Jim Harbaugh with the Chargers. Justin Herbert didn't have 200 passing yards last week, but he did throw for a touchdown. J.K. Dobbins, probably the story of that game, 135 rushing yards, 13.5 yards a carry with a touchdown in that game. And rookie Ladd McConkey getting his first career touchdown out of the University of Georgia. And the Chargers bring this offense to town with a defense that held the Raiders, which might not be saying much, to 10 points. That's just as many as the Panthers scored in week 1. Shannon, prediction. Are Carolina at least, will the Panthers at least cover the spread?
Do I really have to answer this, Ron?
Yeah, I mean, we might as well. Like, I think the Chargers are going to win by 14 or more. Easily.
I think so too. And what gets me about it is that Jim Harbaugh doesn't have to have Connor Stallions on the sideline.
There's a funny story between J.K. Dobbins and Coach Harbaugh that we'll talk about off the air that came out. in an interview with J.K. Dobbins. But yeah, I mean, listen. Hopefully next week we'll see better effort. Maybe we'll have something positive to talk about next week, because I know I don't want the fans who listen to this show being genuinely irritated that we're being so negative. We're not. I don't want to be. But this is the Cat Cave. This is intended to be a safe space where we can kind of talk about the Panthers in a way that seems genuine and real. And so hopefully the people who are listening and watching over on Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel can feel it's not that we're talking bad about them to talk bad about them. It's we're talking bad because we're frustrated because we want them to be better. And I think there's one person in particular that couldn't care less, and that is one David Tepper. Folks, that's the show for this week. If you want to find my co-host Shannon Smith, go over to X and Instagram and find him at podcast_Smitty. I've changed my Instagram handle. So on X, you can find me at Tapouts and TDs, Facebook.com/Tapouts and Touchdowns, or on Instagram, I am at Ryan Frick Comedy. Go give me a follow on Instagram. If, like I said at the beginning of the show, we are going to get the socials back from Michael Davis to talk about Cat Cave and to post from the Cat Cave social accounts. So on Facebook, you go to facebook.com/thecatcaveffsn, and on Instagram and X at thecatcave_ffsn. So until then, you may now exit the Cat Cave. But make sure you listen to more content on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel and more Carolina-themed podcasts on the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, powered by the Fans First Sports Network. For Shannon Smith, I'm Ryan Frick, and we'll see you next week right back here inside the Cat Cave.